Hey everyone. So today we're going to see how we can scrape New York Times using Puppeteer and Node.js, of course. Right. So let's get started. So the first thing you need to do is install Puppeteer, and once you install, you just invoke that by requiring it here like this. So we can launch that in headless mode, and we are going to um, set the user agent itself to a Chrome on a Mac so that it doesn't think we're a bot. In fact, headless is set to false just for a minute, and then we can always set to true later. Right. So here's how it works later. You just open the browser and create a new page as if you will do as you do in Chrome, and except that the entire thing is automated. And then you navigate to newyorktimes.com. And you just wait for the body to load. Wait for selector means wait for the body to load. This is how a jQuery waits for the body load and document load or whatever you want to call it. And then once it's loaded, you're free to evaluate the code. Right? So it's like going into the console in Chrome and actually checking out different variables and stuff like that. So now you can use selectors here to actually fetch data. So, but before we do that, let's check out what it entails. So we're going to go to New York Times and actually right click on one of the stories and inspect it in Chrome. And straight away you can see here that there's a lot of weird CSS classes here. That's not going to help us much because it doesn't make any sense, so we can't rely on it. But we can rely on this one class. If you can look at this, straight away my eye goes to the asset wrapper class. That makes sense. My guess is that a lot of these articles are basically wrapped using the asset wrapper class. So let me just ascertain that. Let me go to another one. And yeah, so if you look at this, when I go over it, it sort of blocks that entire article out. So everything we need is inside this one asset wrapper class. Everything else is a child of that class, of that div, right? So what we're going to do is pull out that div and then iterate through it. That is a very secure way of scraping data. Otherwise, we will get a piece from here and piece from the next asset wrapper. So one of the first rules of scraping is to break it down into multiple chunks of data. And so our error, the prone, the scope of errors is only limited to that block. Then we can use all sorts of tricks to ascertain that we're getting the right pieces of data, right? So here let's start writing it. So we've seen that we have to remember the exact class name, which is asset wrapper. So I'm just going to go back here and I'm going to call the function document dot body dot query selector all. Selector means I'm selecting something. It's like a CSS selector. You can even use XPath here. And this is a function by itself, actually, query selector. In case, but the query selector only assumes there's only one item of that particular criteria that you're giving, right? For example, if the document's title is what is required, there's only one title to the document, so you can easily use this, and it makes sense for you to use the singular format of this, which is the query selector, and then simply to get the title. But we want something which repeats a lot, which is the posts, right? So we're going to use the word query selector all. That's the function we're going to use, right? In fact, this should give out an array, right? Because not, so we're going to use, let's say we want to store it in the posts array, right? And then what is it? It's now just a very simple CSS selector. So for example, if I want to select an element with an ID that I know exists, I can give hash and then the ID of that particular thing, and then whatever is the ID. But if it is a class name, in this case asset wrapper, we're going to go with class name here. So in the dot operator tells the selector to look for the class name, right? So here the class name is query, sorry, What was it? It is asset wrapper. Asset wrapper. All right. So close it there, and that will give us a bunch of gibberish actually, but it'll zero in to something which is a predictable piece of gibberish. So now this needs to be iterated on, you see. So what I'll do now is actually go through each one of those. So the posts will have all the posts in an array. So we're gonna just go to for each then, right? For each of create a function. We're going to say inside of that item is where I want this, and then that's my function. I'm going to open up a function here, which is that, right? Here we go. So post for each should give us here an ability to query it. So before I do that, I'm just going to do everything in a try-catch block, because what happens is many of the times some of the articles may not have certain elements all the time. Like maybe the date is not there, it doesn't matter, or there's no author, so certain elements may not be there, or there might be no summary, right? Only the headline. So we don't want it to fail at all. So for that, we're going to use a try-catch block. And actually it's just a trick, because you're going to not do anything inside of this. So, and just leave it there, just like that, right? Now what we do is let's try and query inside of this and try get us one thing successfully. All right, so let's try and get the title. Maybe let's see what is easy to get. So now we are inside this. Imagine an asset wrapper item has all of this. So if I want to get the title, which is here, something about coronavirus, we're gonna get the H2, right? The H2 seems to be unique enough, because H2 is a headline. I don't think they will use that willy-nilly. So that gives me enough confidence to simply query for H2, except that I'm not querying the document as a whole. I'm just querying the item inside of this dot query selector. Now, query selector all is suggested, but not required in this case, because I know there is only one H2. And then I'm just going to do that. It's not a class name, so it's a tag. So I'm just going to use that directly. And now I need not the HTML, because that will be all gibberish. Inner text, sorry, is what we're going to get. And let's store this as something, as title, maybe, right? Title of that the headline, the article. Now, let's see if we can make an array out of this and then pass it outside of this function, so that we can print it in the console over here, right? We need to get it out of here. So we need to return back something here. So what I'll do is I'm just going to create an array here, post items or something equals, I'll initialize that, and then I'm going to keep pushing items into that array as and when I find them. So what I'll do is I'll say post items dot push, boom, right? Here we're going to push as an array within it, which is an associative array, which will be something like, let's say, the title itself and then the variable title. Okay, so we're going to keep pushing it. Let's name it something. I accidentally pressed save, so I'm going to call it nyt underscore get.js, right? Cool. Okay, so now these are pushed. Now we just need to pass it back, and I would pass it in a bigger array with sort of the let me just yes. So this ends here. Somewhere here we need to return the array. So we're going to return a bunch of items here. Okay. So to return the bunch of items, we need to populate them first of all. So I'm going to declare that var items equals, let's say we want to call them posts, right? And then let's just take the post items and then return it. Right? Let's just print this and see. Let's run this and see what happens. It should be able to print the post with the headline at this moment. So if I were to say node nyt underscore get.js, let's run it. Oops. Throw error. Sorry about that. What did I do? Did I save this in the right place? Oh, sorry. I think I saved it in the wrong area. I'm just going to save this in YouTube code and Puppeteer nyt get. Yes. So here should be able to get the data now. So I'm going to load this with head, not without head. So this will load, and once it finishes loading, this gives you an idea. This is nothing but Chrome actually, totally being Puppeteer. Oh, there you go. You can see the titles here. Right? You can see a bunch of titles from New York Times that's being fetched using the asset wrapper as a wrapper and controlling that and getting to the H2 inside of it. So while we are at it, one more important thing that we need is the link itself. So I had my eye on that. So what we're going to do is we're going to get the link item inside of it. So all we got to do is instead of the H2 block, we just have to get the ahref inside of it. There's only one ahref, as you can see. So what I'll do is I'll just go and just copy this, and I'm going to get the ahref. So if I'm going to get the anchor, I need not the inner text, because it'll again give me back the same title. So instead of that, I'm going to now query for the href actually, and then call it link. All right. Now if I run it, this is getting to be annoying, isn't it? So what I'll do is I'll actually cut that out for a second. Now we don't need it. We know how that works. So there's no point looking at it all the time. There you go. Oh, okay. Sorry, I forgot about actually sending back the links. Right. So I'm going to call it link, and send that back. And I'm going to make this headless true so that it doesn't bother us so much. There you go. You got the title and you got the links inside of it. Bingo. So let's get one more item from that measure. Maybe we can get let's get the P, the paragraph, right? The summary itself. So that is encapsulated very nicely for us inside of a paragraph, as it always is. So what I'm going to simply do is actually copy this and get the paragraph out. Right, so I'm going to call that summary, and that's the P paragraph in a text, and then pass that back as summary. Summary. If I run it, bingo, we got it all. Right, you can see here that all the links and all the titles and all the summaries, everything is here. In this way, you can scrape the New York Times using Puppeteer. But this is not the end of this, right? So you will see that if you run this enough, that one user agent spoofing like this is not enough. You'll need to put this in a rotator, right? So we need to have a function which automatically rotates user agent strings, and this needs to come from probably a big array of user agent strings randomly picked every time you call a URL. Otherwise, the same exact signature, if you keep sending, New York Times or any other website could easily block you. The other one is, if you really want to make this scalable, is the fact that this IP of yours is going to be the same all the time. New York Times knows that, so no matter how many times you say change the user agent, that's a good trick, but it'll only last a few hundred URL fetches, after which the simple algorithms can pick out that you are coming from the same IP. You can restart the router only as many, so many times, because all of those IPs will get blocked anyway. So the way to really scale this is just basic code, is to first of all rotate user agents and also rotate proxies. You need proxies for that. And you can take any of the rotating proxy services, but we have one. We do a lot of this over the last 15, 20 years. So in fact, it's called proxiesapi.com. You don't have to use this, but you're welcome to try it out. There are 1,000 API calls free, no credit card required. So all you have to do is, instead of calling New York Times, in this case it's example.com over here, you're going to, instead of calling it directly, you're going to call our API endpoint with the intended URL itself as a variable. Right? Here is where NewYorkTimes.com will be passed. You will not call New York Times directly. You'll call it through us. We will take care of everything behind the scenes. We'll take care of captchas, we'll take care of browser identities, which is the user agent string. We do multiple retries and millions of proxies. We'll pass it through so that you'll never really repeat the IP address um, again, right? All you need is an API key for it, really. And in fact, you can get that in 2 minutes via free sign up without any credit card. Actually, test it out. Anything that's bothering you, any particular URL, can be easily tested out using this service. So that's how you really scale it. Never mind that pitch, because yeah, I feel a bit awkward, but that's an honest thing. Unless you want to be stuck at amateur level, if you want to scale any web scraping operation, you just definitely need some third-party services, unfortunately. And we are just like you, but we've tried everything, and we tried even public open proxies. None of that work in production level environment. You need private residential proxies which are completely secure, dedicated, and that's what we use. So even otherwise, I hope you enjoyed this. It's a simple. I hope that you take away at least the code. There'll be a link to get this code. If you can type it in, don't worry about it. And thank you.